It's the most wonderful time of the year, and there's nothing better than gathering with the family or friends with a good old Christmas movie. However, there are so many holiday classics out there that it can get a bit overwhelming when it comes to picking that perfect one. So we're going to try and help you out here and give you our top 5 must-watch Christmas movies coming up.
Did you rub my lamp?
1,000 generations to the Una.
Here we go.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? And welcome to FilmSpeak, where the conversation continues after the credits. If this is our first time meeting, hey, my name is Griffin. I'm an LA-based entertainment journalist and film critic, and if you want to be a part of that conversation, you are definitely in the right place. Consider subscribing to the channel for more insight, analysis, and interviews behind your favorite movies. Before we get to the Christmas movies, however, it's time we confront the Christmas stalker. I'm referring, of course, to the ever-watching home invader, Nicholas Santa Claus. He knows when you're sleeping, he knows when you're awake, and if you're not using ExpressVPN, he's tracking your every move online. That's right, folks, FilmSpeak has gone commercial. Well, not really. We're just doing some cool stuff with the folks over at ExpressVPN, and this is our first official endorsement for the channel, so it's a kind of a cool opportunity for me while giving you all some value in the process. If you don't know what a VPN does, basically it protects your data from the spying eyes of Santa Claus and all the big brother companies on the web. This protection comes with some really cool practical benefits. For example, some of the holiday favorites like Christmas with the Cranks. That was ironic. I don't think anyone actually likes that movie. And one of my personal favorites, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, aren't actually available on US streaming services unless you have ExpressVPN. Being able to watch your favorite movies is only the beginning. There are a ton of internet pitfalls you might be falling victim to, like being charged more for airline tickets because of where you live. And a VPN could guard you against exactly that. So take back your privacy from the prying eyes of Mr. Claus and check out ExpressVPN. Just click the link down in the description below or follow this URL, www.expressvpn.com/FilmSpeak, to learn more and also get a sweet discount in the process. All right, now on to the video. So yes, it's the Yuletide season, and I figured that we might want to put together some festive content for you all, and so we're going to be talking about our top 5 Christmas movies here, and I'm not doing this alone. I'm, of course, joined by the ranking king himself, Sean Chandler, from Sean Chandler Talks About. Sean, how's it going, man?
Things are going good. This worked out really nicely. I had just decided not to do my own video on this exact subject, and then you texted me like, hey man, want to cover this? I was like, I've already written the notes. This is perfect.
Yeah, I mean, you really can't ask for a better, happy accident here, because I think we were actually going to cover it on our podcast that we do. Yep.
There were like so many different things where this was almost going to happen in a different way, and now we get to do it right now.
It's beautiful.
Perfect.
Yeah, exactly. So before we get started here, guys, why don't you jump down in the comment section and let us know what your top 5 Christmas movies is, and we'll try and have a lively discussion as well. I know Christmas movies are a really interesting thing. They're super personal, and they usually tie into, what you grew up watching, what movies you find to be the funniest, what captures the Christmas spirit the best. And so there's a lot of factors that go into there. And so I'm sure a lot of lists are going to be different, and there's also a lot of lists that are going to be the same. So yeah, definitely let us know what your top 5 Christmas movies are down in the comment section below. And so Sean, I do want to ask you, first of all, when it comes to Christmas movies, what are the factors that are the most important for you when selecting the entries on this list?
So as I was going into it, when I think Christmas movie, I think it has to be about family. Obviously, it has to be about Christmas. Has this element of coming togetherness to it. And there's just slight tweaks to this. Obviously, there are stories that aren't always about the family getting together, maybe a group of friends getting together. But that sort of idea of that jolly spirit is a big one that comes to mind. Likewise, just something that I want to watch every year.
Yeah.
I want them to have a sense of nostalgia to them. So normally when I think the best Christmas movies, that's a list that's tough to get on because you have to stand the test of time. But it's also not just do I watch it every year, because there's several movies that I watch every year that I'm like, this is a bad movie, but man, it brings back the memories. Or well, sometimes they're random ones, like we watch Four Christmases almost every year. Like it's a bad movie with Reese Witherspoon, Vince Vaughn. But for whatever reason, my wife and I love to watch it every single Christmas, even though everyone else seems to hate it because, the characters are the worst and they're mean-spirited.
Yeah.
So it's kind of odd the way that this works. But as I was making my list, these sort of Christmas-centric family movies that I watch every year and that have stood the test of time.
Yeah, I think that's what it comes down for me. It's part tradition, part like, the films that I've grown up with and the films that have like really impacted me and the films that just make me feel good. Because like there are movies that I watch at Christmas time that aren't necessarily Christmas movies, but they just make me feel good. Like Harry Potter has started to become one of those things, you can thank Freeform or ABC Family for that one, but Harry Potter has sort of started to become that. Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, just big, family-centric pieces of entertainment. Right. And so while they're not necessarily Christmas films, they are movies that, I like watching during this time of year. So
now, if someone would just do a recut where they superimposed the Santa hats on everybody, switched out some of the music with Christmas music,
yeah,
and you, I don't know how you do it, but you put like maybe there's a Christmas tree on top of Mordor or something like that. I mean, just think they're traveling to try to get to a Christmas tree then. It's suddenly a Christmas movie. These are great ideas.
These are small edits that help the overall cohesion of this list. So,
and I'm sure that's what Tolkien intended.
Well, listen, the man was a man of faith, so I'm not gonna. I'm just gonna throw that out there. But, anyways, all right, Sean, let's get into this top 5 list, starting with your number 5. What do you got?
Number 5 on my list, I'm going to go with Die Hard. Now, if you're familiar with my channel, Die Hard is one of my absolute favorite movies. So of just this list, it would be higher if it was just generically a list of movies that I enjoy. But as a Christmas movie, I had it a little bit lower because it's not one that I can watch with the family yet. And therefore, as one of those criteria, what makes for a great Christmas movie, over half my family has to get excluded when it comes time to watch this one. But for me, this easily falls into the Christmas movie category because it is about a husband trying to get to his wife at a Christmas party to celebrate the holidays. Christmas music is playing. The journey, the action that takes place in between it is the conflict stopping a family from getting together to celebrate Christmas and a husband and wife trying to reconcile. Those are Christmas themes. That's the Christmas plot. That there's guns in it and violence, that's just part of what makes it awesome. So it has all the elements that I love of a great movie. It has the Christmassy stuff in there. It's one that my wife and I watch every Christmas season, as well as a couple of other times throughout the year. But this weekend, we actually don't have our kids. They'll be at the grandparents' house, and Die Hard is playing at the local theater.
There you go.
You know what I might be going to go see in the theater this weekend to spark up the Christmas spirit. I tried really hard to get a whole family adventure to go see Die Hard in the theater, but as it turns out, my wife doesn't think a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old should be watching that one in the theater just yet. So it's at number 5 on my list. Whenever they're old enough, though, it'll go up.
Well, listen, your son's already watching Predator. Die Hard is the next logical step.
I know. That's what I don't understand. Like it's outrageous. Sometimes our logic is sound, though. Sometimes our logic is, I want to make sure that they don't watch these movies until they can really appreciate it. I want them to not take it for granted.
Yeah.
So when they watch it the first time, that they really remember it, they soak it in, and have an experience with it.
Yeah, and
so
that's the most important thing when it comes to sharing Christmas movies with the next generation, is just like, you want that first initial viewing to be something they remember. Yeah.
So that's an understandable argument.
All right, so coming in at number 5 for me is something that I thought about for a while. I thought, should I include this here? Should this be my wild card pick? Who knows? But ultimately, I decided to go with Batman Returns, which isn't overtly a Christmas movie, but it takes place at Christmas time. I think it's very festive. The whole city, Gotham City, is done up in eloquent Christmas decorations, and I do feel that it is a film that could only take place at Christmas time, which is one of the reasons why I put it on this list. Now, aside from that, I just think Batman Returns is an incredible film that really it delves into the psyche of Bruce Wayne and of Batman, and deals with a lot of themes regarding oppression, sexuality, taking control and whatnot. And I think what I've always loved about it is that Penguin and Catwoman are basically the manifestations of two sides of Bruce's psyche that he's really struggling with, and both of them are him if he goes too far in one direction. And so while it's not necessarily a Christmas movie, we're dealing with Christmas themes, I think the way it's presented, it is gift wrapped in a very eloquent it's gift wrapped in very eloquent packaging, and so I think that just sort of lends me to kind of like put it on the list.
Yes, this is one of the first movies I remember the anticipation of it coming out, because I was still a little kid, and that back in the day we didn't have the internet to let us know when movies were coming out, and so they would just put out like magazine articles, and they put out these pictures, and it's like Christmassy Batman images of him in the snow with Christmas trees behind him. Like, yeah. What? Well, this is interesting. And so I have a very fond memories of when this one came out, and having all the McDonald's toys that went along with it that freaked out McDonald's. Is what are you doing for this dark movie about killing kids? Yeah. So I don't normally think of this one in the Christmas vibe, but it absolutely takes place at Christmas. It has Christmas elements to it. But
I think that's the thing. It's like there are so many loopholes when it comes to this. Like I said, people could include like Harry Potter on this list because there are like iconic Christmas scenes in this, and especially in Batman Returns taking place during that time of year, there are naturally going to be iconic Christmas moments in this film, and I think there definitely are. And so it's a little bit of a cheat, but I had to put it on there just because it's one that has grown in appreciation for me over the years, and it's one that like I find myself watching more during this time of year. Okay, Sean, moving on to number 4. What do you got?
I've got Christmas Vacation.
That is also my number 4.
Well, that worked out really nicely.
Beautiful. We planned this.
Yes, absolutely. This was not just a freak coincidence.
Yeah.
So, of course, one of the an iconic franchise of the 80s about all of the frustrations of family vacations, and they applied that to Christmas, and they just seem to nail a bunch of these different things that happen, the weird things that happen with families, with this exaggerated, over-the-top version of it.
Yeah.
Created all these memorable moments, iconic sequences, and just, here we are 31 years later, and anytime someone puts too many lights on their house, they're the Griswold house of the neighborhood. Like, exactly. It's just worked its way into popular culture. And, I watched this one just a few days ago, and it's still funny, still memorable, still holds up.
Yeah, I mean, this is one that is basically once Thanksgiving comes rolling around, it's just on loop in the house. Well, it's on loop on like, AMC or like Freeform and stuff like that. This one is just constantly playing. And you know what? I don't really get tired of it. It's just so funny, and I think Chevy Chase obviously as Clark Griswold is just like an iconic character in and of itself, but this is like the best version of that character through all the vacation movies, for sure. But I think what you said that I like so much about it is that it's relatable, right? Like this is like there are so many moments in this where you're like having family gatherings or family dinners, and like the grandma comes in and she's just like, off in La La Land or whatever, talking about how things used to be, and like the parents are just like, okay, all right, yeah, can we just get through this dinner so that we can enjoy our version of this? And so I think it's, where Christmas movies usually tend to glamorize family gatherings, this one presents it in like with the right amount of cynicism and snark, and so like I enjoy that, and it never goes into like mean-spirited territory. It's always just like, yeah, maybe in like a slightly heightened reality, this would be what happens, and then there are instances where it's just like, yeah, that's definitely happened before in like a family gathering. And so the relatability and the comedy for sure is what makes this one really special.
Absolutely.
So since that was both of our number 4s, we're going to move on to number 3. So Sean, what do you have at number 3?
Number 3, A Christmas Story, which my logic on this one, a lot of it's the same as Christmas Vacation. Once again, it's about a family around Christmas, and it's just a bunch of these series of these little episodes of things that take place. And because it's set in the past, it has a little bit more set in the past from even when it came out, and it came out 40 years ago, has a little bit more of kind of this transporting you to a different time, a different place, a simpler time, but without really romanticizing it, much like Christmas Vacation doesn't try to romanticize it. It's like, yeah, getting everybody together, it's stressful and stuff goes wrong. And you get a lot of that there, just a bunch of these episodic hijinks. My understanding is even the origin of it came from basically a series of short stories, and that's kind of what the movie is these little episodes of things that happen with this family, all circling around a kid just wanting a specific present for Christmas.
Yeah.
And there's so many quotable lines, so many memorable sequences. Another one that cable just has on loop every December and has for the last, well, as long as cable's been around. And so, another classic.
Yeah, for sure. So this one's really interesting because in theory, everything you said, I should agree with and I should like. But man, I gotta say, I hate this film. I really, really do.
How do I leave this stream again?
It never like sits right with me. I think, and you're right, this one and Christmas Vacation kind of take the same approach, but where it differs is I always found A Christmas Story to be more, it's got more mean-spiritedness to it. It's just, and it's annoying, and the characters are just like, and like, I feel like you had to grow up either watching it in your own household, or you had to grow up, like my grandparents love this film. They think it's so funny. I've never really thought it was funny. I was just like, this is just, it's not good. It's just unpleasant and rather off-putting. If anything, I think this movie makes me hate Christmas more than enjoy it. So it's just, it's so, but I wouldn't begrudge anyone for like putting it on the list or enjoying it, because there are so many people who love it, and it's iconic for good reason. There are like standout moments, like, oh, you'll shoot your eye out and stuff. And I don't know, the encounter with Santa Claus is just like really weird too. And so I don't know, man.
So what you're saying is that this is your number one, and you'll say all your praise later in this list?
Yeah, basically. There's no other choice but to put A Christmas Story at number one. So, anyways, yeah, I'm glad if you like it, but for me personally, it doesn't quite do it for me. So coming in at number 3 for me is one that I think is going to be very high on a lot of your all's list, and theoretically it should be, but I think when it just came down to it, there were just two others that I either think are funnier or more endearing and capture the spirit of the holiday a little bit more. But if I were to pick one that was the quintessential Christmas movie that made me think of just like Christmas in a package, it would be this film, and I'm going with Elf. Is Elf on your list, Sean?
Elf is on my list.
So should we might wait to circle back on that one, but just briefly overall, I think what this does is it takes the glamour of Christmas and it presents it in a way that's not too glamorous. There's a little bit of cynicism in there, but then it kind of comes back around full circle, and it's like, we love this time of season. It's delightful. Be happy, be merry, be like Buddy the Elf. And so it's just one of those that like really makes you feel good, and it's also like really funny. It's hysterical. Probably one of Will Ferrell's best performances to date. And I think the thing that just, being alive when this movie came out, it's just been so great to see a movie, just this random one-off Jon Favreau holiday film that came out in 2003, like gradually become a Christmas classic. And so that's been one of the things that I enjoy about it, and I can't wait to show it to my kids eventually.
It will appear later on my list. I will have many things to say.
Good. I had a feeling. Listen, it's either a top... It's like either at the 2 or 1 slot for another people, and I just unfortunately had to knock it down to 3. But we're in the top 2 now. So Sean, what do you got at number 2?
Number 2, I cheated on this one, and it's Home Alone 1 and 2. And so I was the target age when this one came out. Macaulay Culkin is 1 year older than me, so by the time the movie came out with filming stuff, like I was the age of Kevin when it debuted, and then I was the age of Kevin when the second one debuted. And I mean, it really was like one of those movies that you just went over and over and over again to see in the theater, and it was so fun, it was so funny. And here we are 30 years later. I've got a bunch of kids. They like to watch this movie in February. They like to watch it during the summer. And any time of year they're in the mood for it, we watch it multiple times every December. It just holds up. And kind of the it works in and of itself, but kind of the icing that kind of elevates it in this weird other way that makes it seem like a much sweeter, kinder film than it is John Williams' score. That is such a classic, iconic Christmas score for a movie that's about a family that's the worst, a son that's the worst, and criminals trying to rob people on Christmas while they're out of town. And then you just put this John Williams score on it, have just a couple of scenes of like people sitting around a Christmas tree or at a church while people are sitting, and all of a sudden it has a nice message to it about the family. And it's a movie that weirdly comes together despite how awful the McAllisters are.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of the thing is like, I think this movie actually gets a lot more credit because of John Williams' score. Like, it's, I mean, he does a lot of the heavy lifting in here because, like while the Rube Goldberg experiments and the traps are like really fun when it's going on, this, to me, I've just always hated Kevin. Just because he's like a little dick. Like, he sucks. Like, there's no reason why I should, like, be endeared to him or whatever, or enjoy following him, and he's just like a little brat. And so, like, I don't know, for me, it's similar to A Christmas Story. It's like when I'm watching Home Alone, I'm just sort of like, it's kind of unpleasant, and like this is like the stuff about the holidays that I hate. But I don't know. I mean, seeing what's his name? Why am I blanking on his name? Joe Pesci.
Joe Pesci.
Yeah, seeing Joe Pesci in there is a blast, and it's a lot of fun. I think when like the traps start going down and whatnot, and like there's no denying that Chris Columbus really has a knack for like family films. But for me, I just it's similar to A Christmas Story. I just can't get past like the unlikable nature of the characters. Okay, now coming in at number 2 for me might be a little controversial, especially when it's this high on the list. And I know, Sean, you're gonna have very strong opinions on this one. But number 2 for me is the film that I grew up loving, the film that made me laugh the most, and also had a nice heart to it, and it signified how great of a physical comedian Jim Carrey is.
Jim Carrey was.
Yeah, exactly.
I figured it out.
If you knew it going in. Listen, guys, if you know me, you know this is one of my favorite movies of all time, and that is Dr. Seuss's How the Grinch Stole Christmas, the Ron Howard film. Oh my God, I quote this movie on a regular basis, like even outside of Christmas. It's ridiculous the impact that this film has had just on my life in general. I mean, like, I just have vivid memories watching Jim Carrey like bark at this little girl like a lunatic and just cracking up, dying. I mean, when you talk about the Christmas movies and like, you know, what do you take into account when you make this list? I think this film nails the comedy, especially from Jim Carrey. And then it also like the set design, the production design, and everything. It's like it's kind of incredible what they were able to accomplish and how they were able to bring a new and distinct version of Whoville from a 2D hand-drawn book to life, basically. I mean, there's a reason that it was up for awards for like, you know, makeup and hairstyling and production design and all sorts of things. I mean, it just completely creates this wholly original world, and it asks you to embark on this sweet and hilarious journey. And I just, the Grinch has always been my favorite just Christmas story, like the Dr. Seuss one, and I love the Boris Karloff 2D animated one, but this one really just like it made it its own. You know, there's some cynicism in there that you'll notice that there's a common thread here. I do like my Christmas movies to have a little bit of cynicism in there. There's the right amount of cynicism. There's like Jim Carrey screaming at people, and for a character that is like supposed to be mustache twirling and maniacal, Jim Carrey just kind of throws that out the window and he makes it its own. It's one of his most iconic performances of all time, and he is completely unrecognizable obviously behind all the makeup, but even when he's doing all his Jim Carrey stuff, you're just like, this is something else. I don't know what I'm watching, but it is truly spectacular. And so maybe it's nostalgia, maybe it's the comedy, but I have just always loved this movie.
So I spent 20 years avoiding this movie. I hadn't seen it until 2-ish weeks ago. The trailers looked creepy and off-putting to me. So I watched it a couple weeks ago, planning for a Grinch ranking that, depending on when this video comes out, might have already come out on my channel. And so I finally watched it, and it was creepier, more off-putting, and less charming than I was expecting. And so I didn't know people's reception to it. Like, I just had no point of reference. So I tweeted out about it like, I haven't watched this because it just seemed like it was off-putting. What do you guys think about it? And a lot of people apparently like this movie and think I'm insane. But yeah, especially for my entire life, I've been watching the original 25-minute special or reading the book, whether that was as a kid or reading it to my kids. And so then watching this version of it at the age I am now, it just felt like they added a bunch of stuff that for me detracted from the message. Like in the first 5 minutes, we're talking about the consumerism of Whoville. I was like, what are we doing now? And then we're adding a backstory for the Grinch about how he almost felt like a character out of a Tim Burton movie, because he's a fair, misunderstood weirdo.
Yeah.
That's bullied into being set apart. So he's Edward Scissorhand and all, Oswald Cobblepot, all these characters, and I don't know, it just felt wrong to me. So I did not enjoy it at all. I probably could have enjoyed some of the Jim Carrey stuff, but I was just so frustrated by watching something that seemed, from my perspective as the guy watching it, so far removed from growing up on all this other stuff and then being an adult with the other stuff, that it just seemed like it totally missed the point. And so I was caught off guard by how many people loved this movie.
Yeah.
And then even as we're talking now, I mean, obviously there's so many things we totally agree on, and 3 of the last 4 total opposites.
Yeah, which I'm actually glad that that's the case, because that was my biggest concern going into this, was like, there's going to be a lot of overlap because people like the same things, and I'm like, oh wait, no, there's a generational difference here, and that can make things
and it really does.
Before we give you our number 1 Christmas movies, guys, we're going to go off here and talk about some wild card picks. We're going to give you those outsiders that maybe you hadn't considered before, some honorable mentions, and all that stuff. So this is our wild card pick. Sean, what do you got?
All right, I'm going to go with one way outside the box, not because it's not Christmassy, but because it's not a movie that a lot of people have seen, and it's only, I guess it's actually only about a year or 2 old. It's called Anna and the Apocalypse.
Yeah, okay.
It is my favorite high school musical zombie apocalypse Christmas movie. Of that genre, this is my favorite of the bunch. I saw it actually at its world premiere at Fantastic Fest back in 2017. The whole cast was there and everything. I didn't know what it was. I just saw the word apocalypse went into it. And then I started reading about it, and I was like, wait, it's a musical? This is going to be bad. And then it turned out to have like these really catchy songs that were both Christmassy and coming of age and tied into an apocalypse. It works as a zombie movie. And so it's this film that everyone I know that's seen it has had positive things to say about it. But it was a smaller film, and so that it hasn't fully kind of caught on yet with a lot of people. So if you like musicals, Christmas, or zombie movies, and especially if you like all 3, you know your homework assignment.
Yeah, Anna and the Apocalypse is actually a really great gem that I've seen it like one time, and I was like, oh, this is nice. I could see this becoming like a cult classic, which it really has, over the years since it's come out. So no, that's a great pick, and definitely more of a wild card pick than what I was gonna go with, which is kind of a cheat because it's multiple films, but it's every Shane Black movie, because they all take place at Christmas, which, it's Shane Black himself has said that it's more of a gimmick now because people just sort of laugh at the fact, it's like, oh, of course, Shane Black, it takes place at Christmas. But I don't know, I feel like it's similar to like Die Hard. They actually kind of work in that is set in that time period. And I think one of the things when like you hear Black talk about it is like it represents like a a nice little retrospective time in the lives of us as people. And so for the characters, for them to go through such personal journeys and be kind of look back on the year and like the stuff that they've done, I think there is a nice little tie in there. And so of course we're going to be talking about films like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. Even The Nice Guys has a little bit of Christmas festivity in it towards the end. Iron Man 3 technically is a Christmas movie because it does start and end with those bookends and everything like that. And then some of the Lethal Weapon films.
Do you suppose that the reason that The Predator didn't work is because it was set at Halloween instead of Christmas, and he moved away from the holiday that connects with his heart, and we got an abomination because of it?
You might be onto something there because you're right.
I'm a thinking man.
But listen, like when you're the guy behind Lethal Weapon, The Last Boy Scout, The Long Kiss Goodnight, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, Iron Man 3, and then like The Nice Guys, they all take place at Christmas. And the one that doesn't is arguably your worst movie. I think that might be the case.
Yep.
Anyways,
it's just math right there.
It is just math. And so listen, if you haven't really explored Shane Black's filmography a whole lot, go give it a watch. It is nice festive viewing, especially if you're in that like Die Hard mentality where you want more like action driven Christmas films. All right, Sean, the time has come. It's time for us to reveal our number one Christmas movie of all time. What do you got?
All right, using that math we just talked about, and if you were paying attention to what I said before, coming to number one for me is Elf. This is a movie that came out when I was still in my mustache twirling, pretentious pre-hipster phase of watching obscure stuff and old cinema. I was a true cinephile. And then this movie so sweet came out called Elf that even my jaded Grinch heart had to fall in love with it. And it's so funny. It's so nostalgic. Actually, there's a new series on Netflix called the Movies That Made Us, or the Holiday Movies That Made Us.
Yeah.
The Movies That Made Us actually came out before, and they talked about Die Hard as well as Home Alone in it. But they did the Christmas Movies That Made Us, and they did one on Elf, and they even talk about how just built into it is that they wanted to feel like all of those specials from the past, which led to all kinds of legal troubles for them as they were making it. But this Will Ferrell has done a lot of unbelievably funny movies. I think this is his funniest movie.
Yeah.
And it's rewatchable. That I've been watching it for 17 years and it still makes me laugh out loud. He's so good at playing innocent. And when you see a grown man behaving in this manner, while it's so believable with an innocence, it's so funny. James Caan as this serious, kind of intense guy playing against Will Ferrell doing all this stuff.
Yeah.
And like in the one sense, it does feel like he's acting in a different movie than everyone else. And that's exactly why it works so well, because he's so James Caan in this Christmas movie. So I love this movie, and every single time it makes me laugh.
Yeah. I think that's really funny because it is like, it's by far the best iteration of the fish out of water story I think I've ever seen. Like it's so good at it. But it is funny because you're right. Yeah, James Caan is almost acting in a different movie, and yet it's like Buddy the Elf who like comes in and like he's really the guy who's like from a different thing, and he like lifts everyone's spirits up, and he just kind of like transforms everyone. And it's James Caan is the one who kind of has to like embrace the meaning of the season. But it is. There's nothing quite like watching Elf. I mean, it's a classic for a reason. There's a reason like all the network television channels play it on repeat nonstop. It's endlessly rewatchable, and it's definitely one of Will Ferrell's funniest films, like with the spaghetti and the sweets, and he chugs the Coke, and it's like it's the best.
Eating gum off in the rails and everything.
Yeah, no, it's like it's the best like like just ridiculous food gags that I've ever seen. It's probably one of the best burping scenes I've ever seen, for sure. And only Will Ferrell could pull it off. Only Will Ferrell could do that.
And then the other piece in it is Jon Favreau was the director of it. And this is the one that really propelled him into the spotlight that has led to the career that he's had, where he's now this very influential guy that's, to a group of people saving Star Wars and reinventing technology. And even on this documentary that I was talking about, where how they did the movie, and he insisted on using forced perspective for all the stuff at Santa's workshop, and the kind of things that he mentioned of what you have to do to make this movie work. You could just hear a guy that is a true storyteller that has a thought process to it. He's not just trying to get a directing job. He's not just trying to make a movie. He has a vision for what he's trying to do. And this is really kind of the origin of him as that A-list director.
100%. Yeah, a lot of I'm glad you brought up the filmmaking, because that is something that I think it doesn't get enough appreciation in this film, and the seeds were definitely planted for the trajectory of his career.
And there's a lot of things, like when you get to the New York City, to where it's pretty straightforward, so you don't notice it. But the choices made at the North Pole, that's the stuff that's like a real filmmaker with a vision, that when you think this has to make this movie work, it has to feel like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Ranger.
Yeah.
Ranger. I always say that. It's like not the first time I've done it. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, to make it feel like that. And it just immediately evokes this sense of nostalgia, and just the way they did it, that I don't know. It's just a special film.
It really is. It really is. So coming in at number one for myself is probably the quintessential Christmas movie. It's number one at everyone's list, and there's really no reason why it shouldn't be number one at my list, and that is It's a Wonderful Life. It's just that movie, it's timeless. Frank Capra really just taps into universal themes of, community, the meaning of life and purpose and stuff like that. And I think it's the perfect Christmas movie because, so many of us can relate to George Bailey of, not being able to live the dreams that we always had intended for us because life just, kept happening. And if you're someone in his position where it's like you gave up so much of your own life to make other people's lives better, then it's like, what's the point? And this movie says, no, there is a point to that, because without you, this wouldn't have happened. This person may have died. This, institution would have collapsed. And it really allows us to see that, while we might not be, doing the most glamorous things or whatnot, there is importance in what we are doing. And it's a very serious and dark message, and the film isn't afraid to shy away from that and really just show that, you might have a wonderful life at the end of the day. And so I think, as opposed to a lot of the other films that came out during this time period, that really they glamorized Christmas. They were just like, oh, it's beautiful, it's the best time of the year, it makes everyone happy. This film really kind of was ahead of its time and veered in a more mature, different direction, I think. And it's one of the greatest films of all time, and we see countless other filmmakers try and tap into that magic, especially when they're dealing with similar themes of existentialism and whatnot. Even a film like Soul that just came out that is coming out this year kind of has a similar sort of messaging to it. And so I think for me, it's one that I always enjoy watching every Christmas Eve. I don't watch it a whole lot during the Christmas season, just because it is one of those more thoughtful, mature films. But it's undoubtedly eternal, and I think that's why I just for me it's always been number one at the top.
I've always hated this movie. Okay, I've actually never seen this movie before, which is
Sean.
Yeah, it's just one of those weird blind spots in the list of movies. Of all the movies I have seen, I haven't seen It's a Wonderful Life, like the number one Christmas movie of all time. And as far as I know, there's no real reason for it. I haven't avoided it. It's not like I've turned people down when they've tried to watch it. Just one that we ended up not watching at my household growing up, and so it didn't become kind of part of my family tradition. So then it just never happened.
That's wild. That's wild. I mean, you know, there are probably some of them, some Christmas films that I have blind spots on that I'm blanking on right now. But listen, it's just one of those ones where it happens sometimes. But definitely get around to it, because I feel like that's one that I think you would really enjoy just from a messaging standpoint. But there you have it, guys. Those are our respective top 5 Christmas movies of all time. Again, be sure to jump down in the comment section and let us know what your top 5 Christmas movies would be, or just top 5 holiday films if you don't celebrate Christmas. That's the great thing. There's a whole bunch of movies out there that take place during the holiday season, so we definitely want to hear from you all. So put those lists down below. Sean, thank you again for joining me on this video. Where can everyone find you?
You can find me on YouTube. If you look for Sean Chandler, you'll either find an NFL player or a guy that looks like me and talks about movies. It's the guy that looks like me and talks about movies.
There you go. And guys, lastly, if you haven't done so, be sure to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the FilmSpeak channel so you don't miss out on small editorials like this and other entertainment-centric content. We like to say the conversation continues after the credits, and of course, we'd love to have you be part of that conversation, so consider subscribing to the channel. You can always like FilmSpeak on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, just search FilmSpeak, and if you like me specifically and you like what I have to say, you can give me a follow on Twitter at Griff Schiller. All right, that's gonna do it for this video, guys. Happy holidays. Hope you all have a great season, and until next time, take care.